Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Genesis Community Livecast. This is our Genesis Shapers recap episode for December 2020. Shapers meeting, move around the block. We talked a lot about block portability in this Shapers meeting. For those who don't know me, my name is David Vogelpohl. I've been a proud member of the Genesis community for a little over 8 years now. I lead Genesis at WP Engine, and I love helping the Genesis community get better together with my friends from the Shapers. Joining me for this recap episode are two Genesis Shapers. First, I'd like to welcome back Carrie Dils of carriedils.com. Hey, Carrie.
Howdy.
Glad to have you here. And for his first appearance on a Shapers recap episode, I'd like to welcome Nick Croft of designsbynickthegeek.com. Hey, Nick.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Nick, you're so well known for like so many other reasons. I feel like it's much more than designsbynickthegeek.com. You're also known like in the Genesis world for another fairly big accomplishment. What would that accomplishment be, Nick?
I kind of wrote the book on Genesis Explained. So
Yes, you did. I love that. I remember as I first became involved organizationally with Genesis, that's exactly how people described you. I'd seen you around the way. It was like he literally wrote the book on Genesis. So Genesis Explained, right? It's on Amazon and other distributors and things like that.
Yep. Amazon's the main one, digital and paper. I've got some stuff that I'm also working on to make some courseware out of that. So kind of designsbynickthegeek.com has been there. It's where Genesis Explained originated, but things are going to be sort of settling out into some other stuff in the next few months. So.
All right. Well, there's never a dull moment in WordPress and open source. So it sounds like it's keeping you busy, but I'm glad to have you here today to talk to us about what we discussed in the Shapers meeting. So for those that have seen these before, what we do is roll through the questions that were asked to the Shapers and then discuss their responses. So of course, the first question in every meeting is the call for order. Looks like, or call for those that were able to show up. It looks like Remkes DeFrias, Matthew Cardenas of the Matthews on the engineering team, Bill Erickson, Travis Smith. I was not there. Actually, I had a scheduling conflict, and we had a guest moderator for the Shapers meeting who was actually Nathan Rice, the co-creator of Genesis. How did Nathan do? Like, I wasn't there live. I did read it in retrospect, but like Nick, did he do a good job?
Yeah, I think Nathan did a great job. It was really fun seeing him there as the moderator on it, especially having worked with him in a previous life, and then also, all the way back to the very beginnings of Genesis and the old Studio Press forums. So a little bit of flashbacks there.
Yeah, I know you and he go way back. I keep hearing war stories with your name around the virtual water coolers. But yeah, Nathan actually did a wonderful job. I mean, running Slack meetings is not foreign to those in WordPress, particularly those that contribute to core. But yeah, Nathan, I thought, knocked it out of the park, at least when I read it in retrospect. We also have Brian Smith from the Genesis engineering team. Carrie Dils, you showed up. You show up to all of them almost, despite it starting really early for you there in California. Mike Hemberger with My Themes. Let's see who else we got here. Ryan Kenstra from the Genesis engineering team. Sally Getch is there. The Y Bidola, Brian Murray, and John Brown. Looks like there's a few. Oh, Anita Carter also showed up. So quite a good number of folks there. Nathan's first question, though, once we got past the kind of roll call and call to order, is who in the WordPress community are you especially thankful for? Carrie, what was your answer?
I said Francesca Moreno out of the Italian WordPress community. She's a huge and present force, both as a contributor to core and just champion of WordPress. And she's also just a really cool chick.
Oh,
if I can say chick, that may be disrespectful. I don't think Francesca would mind though.
Could you repeat that last part? What do you think she might think is disrespectful?
If I call her a chick.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'll let y'all work that out, but it's glad to hear that you're singing Francesca's praises. I think that part she'll certainly love. Nick, how about you? Who are you thankful for in WordPress this year?
I got in just a minute late, and so I didn't get to answer that in the meeting, but there's a lot of people that I'm very thankful for in WordPress. I think one that I come back to on a regular basis is actually Gary Jones. He is very precise. I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say that. Are we allowed to say? But
Probably not.
He's taught me so much in things, and one of the things he's actually working at WordPress VIP now, and has helped even in some of the stuff I'm doing on the side with getting things set up with WPCS and all these other things like that. So not only is my code better as a result of it, but my code is checking itself now to ensure that it stays better because of all of the work that he's done. So it's taken a lot of effort and weight off of my shoulders of doing code reviews, code checks, and all of those things because of the effort of things that he's done. And it's one of the things that got me into a lot of CI, CD stuff so that all that stuff is happening automatically for us now.
Yeah, I know a lot of people share that same sentiment about Gary in a lot of other contexts. If I read through some of the other replies here from some of the other shapers, we did have a kind of a sidebar here. John had no power. John Brown had no power due to wind in California. Oh my goodness, that must have been rough for him. The Y Bidola though says he's thankful for Bill Erickson and Carrie Dils here. He calls out that their education work is really why he's kind of making that flag. I think those are also great flags. I like Sally's nomination of who she's grateful for, Schreeder. So many people I think share that kind of similar Gary story with Schreeder. I know his code snippets are often used by people not only in the Genesis community but the WordPress community as a whole. Sally also flagged Jill Binder. Jill does a lot around WordPress diversity. She also runs a company called Diverse in Tech, which specializes in achieving diverse representation from speakers at events, and whether virtual or in person. Anita said me. That's so awesome. You know who my person I was going to be thankful for was, Carrie?
Wait, was it Anita?
It was Anita. It was Anita. I don't know why she said she was thankful for me. That's very sweet. But I'm thankful for Anita because of all she does to help others. And I don't just mean in WordPress. Like, she's in forums, she's in the Slack channel, she's helping people learn, she's helping people overcome problems. But like, she does this in her home life. Like, people completely disconnected to WordPress. She's always tweeting or posting on Facebook about some way she's helping somebody that really, really needs it. And I think for me, that's actually the inspiration for adding this question to the Shaper's agenda. She goes on to mention Walter Lopez, Jesse, I can't pronounce his last name. I don't know if you guys can. Messervy.
I'm not sure.
Blank stares. I know. I'm sure Jesse's a wonderful person. I apologize, Jesse, if you're listening. Looks like some other people had mentioned Oz Richards, which also got a lot of notes there. Ryan Murray liked Bill and Carrie, as well as Jared Atkinson. He's kind of an OG Genesis person now running the plugin WP Forums. Nick, you had to have crossed paths with Jared Atkinson at some point.
Jared and I do go back to the beginning of Genesis. Jared, Carrie, and Bill, and I think have all met down in around Austin a couple times, and gone out to dinner with them and really enjoyed that.
Well, that's all. You mentioned all three of those folks, or at least Ryan Murray mentioned all three of them as the folks he felt thankful for. It's funny, y'all tend to do group together. I remember going to a Wiggles concert, and for those who don't know what a Wiggle is, it's a kids thing. I brought my daughter there, and I turned to the right on our row, and I see Bill Erickson and Jared sitting there with their kids, also enjoying a Wiggles show. So it's kind of neat to get a little, I guess, networking there at the Wiggles. That was a fun time. Do you get much into the Wiggles, Carrie? Is it cross your path much?
No, I'm going to say that I leave the Wiggles and Wiggles networking for you guys. But I do want to know if that made the Wiggles tickets a business write-off, a tax write-off, since you there.
It did occur to me, but no, we did not write it. At least I didn't. I don't know if Bill and Jared did, but maybe they did, because it kind of made it a mini WordCamp, like a Wiggle WordCamp. The Wiggles actually have some wonderful music, by the way, Carrie, if you ever want to check that out. It's like probably the least annoying kids show you can watch as an adult. And then Sally, again, super sweet, kind of thanking the WP Engine and Genesis teams for kind of leaning in on Gutenberg. Obviously, lots of stuff changing, but really, really sweet to see that from her. All right, and then Anita's thankful for Slack. Are you Carrie and Nick? Are y'all thankful for Slack, or is it now a burden that rules your life?
I'm very thankful for Slack. I'm also very thankful for the Do Not Disturb feature built into Slack. I once upon a time, I would constantly be checking into whatever the media accounts and doing stuff at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And now I've realized I missed a lot of my kids' life. And so I tend to shut it down around 5 o'clock, and people ping me, I can go check in on it. Otherwise, I can see it in the morning when I get on.
All right.
It's
well,
really helpful.
Yeah, Slack definitely. I think the asynchronous part I'm thankful for. That part I definitely feel like is really good, because I think a lot of people have now adopted these modes of communication, which makes it easier to communicate in that way with a higher number of people. All right, for the next question though, we're going to go with some screen sharing. We're going to kind of take a look at some stuff, because we're going to talk about concepts which are visual, which you tend to do when you talk about things like themes and blocks. So the next question for the shapers is, are any of your customers asking about theme styles or options for implementing Google Web Stories? Now, for those unfamiliar with what a web story is, you're probably familiar with what an Instagram story is. So this is kind of a content format for the web, and I guess I'm air quoting because there's a whole lot of backstory on all this. But the way I think about it is kind of like a mobile friendly, but really easy kind of slideshow, if you will, for presenting content to users. Now, in the social context, the notion of stories has taken over, right? We have Facebook stories, we have Instagram stories. It's like the content format for social. And what Google has implemented is basically the same content format for the web. And the thesis behind this, and you can see Google posting about it and talking about this, is that the stories format is kind of ruling the roost, if you will, in social. And so we need an answer for that for the web. And so what marketers and developers and designers are now thinking about is, okay, well, does web stories fit with my website strategy? And then what advantages do I get from using web stories? Now, web stories do show up in organic search results. They're also featured in Google Discover. So there are ways to use them to attract new attention from search engines. And so we just wanted to ask the shapers, like, is this a thing? Is this popping up on your radar? Before we get into like the comments from the shapers that are not present here today, maybe I'll start with you, Carrie, and then maybe you can answer Nick. Carrie, like web stories, is it on your radar, not on your radar? And I know you're not necessarily doing a ton of client work these days, but I'm just saying, like, how are you thinking about it just as a general strategy?
It was not really been on my radar, honestly. And I don't know, with Google, there's always a little bit of hesitation, like a Google product, how long is it going to stick around, or is it going to have the longevity? But no, personally, I haven't tinkered with it yet.
I mean, I hear that counter argument, like, it's a new thing from Google. Is it going to stay, or is it not going to stay? I mean, we've had AMP for years. We've had Schema for years. Like, what is that like one product? And I don't know if there is one for you, but like, what is, if there is, like, what's that one thing they did that they never kept up that gets you worried? Is it the Google social network that I can't even remember the name of
Google
right now?
Plus, yeah,
Google Plus.
social network.
You're just bummed. You were burned by Google Plus.
I mean, I put all my eggs in that Google Plus basket and just got burned.
Oh my goodness. Are you in TikTok now as a replacement? Is that what you've moved to?
My career could have launched off years ago if Google
Yeah, just focused on something other than Google Plus. Okay, I got you. What about you, Nick? I know you're doing like more client-facing work. Are you seeing web stories pop up with any of your clients?
So a little over a year ago, one of our clients with Reactive contacted us and said that they heard about the Google Web Story, saw how it was implemented in the search results, and wanted to use that as a method for controlling a couple of searches. They have a pretty large site, lots of content. And so a few searches would come up with some content that wasn't entirely what they were really targeting. And so they saw that the Google Web Stories were surfacing to the top of the search results and decided that was going to be the best way to control a few searches, and then created a few stories that targeted those keywords. At the time, it was using the AMP plugin. It wasn't a separate plugin, and it was a beta feature that was activated in the AMP plugin. So that gives you a time frame for when we implemented this. We turned it on, implemented it, had to do just a little bit of effort, a little bit of training, and got them started on creating their first web stories. They published that, and it did exactly what they wanted. They showed up in organic search results, surfaced to the top of the page in a way that just sort of let people learn about something before they got into some of these older articles and stuff that weren't really going to target what they wanted on those particular limited number of searches. So it worked out very well for this client. I think they've been pretty happy with it. And it's something that, any other client that comes in with this kind of need, I feel that we're well positioned to be able to answer it and bring it in to both the organic searches and also the kind of customized discovery experience.
So you're seeing that the content that you've created to date with web stories did show up in search results, and you felt in a meaningful way. Did you have any way that you tried to account for like how much traffic or value that drove?
I don't have access to that data for this particular client, but they said that it did exactly what they wanted. So I don't know that it's driving. They're a large client, have a lot of traffic coming in, and their main goal was they wanted to control, to be confusing, control the story on a couple of searches. And so Google Stories allowed them to control that story, just get the kind of upfront information, especially on the mobile results, where just on a couple of things that they were doing, they were servicing older articles that were very well ranked, and it wasn't exactly the content they wanted to show to people to start with. So this just allowed them to control that environment.
So I'm sure that, the value, it seems like the condition of did it, or the requirement, if you will, of it should help us rank and get more visibility was true. And I'm sure the value of that depends on what's ranking and what content is ranking, and whether that's driving towards a conversion. And then also, of course, the popularity and value of the keywords you're ranking for. But it does sound like that was assistive. And to your point, that the client reported that it fulfilled what they were looking for. What I was doing, were you watching my screen as you were talking through all that?
I was.
Nick, yeah. So for those watching, what I did was I installed the, what do you call it? The Google Stories plugin, and then I added a news story. Hopefully you weren't judging my design skills there, Nick, as I did that. But what this plugin ultimately does is allows you this kind of WYSIWYG interface to build these kind of essentially slides, again, kind of optimized for the more mobile format. You can have custom designs. You don't have to use this kind of click and drag approach, but it's easiest, of course, to demo very quickly. Now, the question for the shapers was, you can see here that I kind of dropped this into a page, and it, gave me this story experience. If this was in a mobile view, you would see it like a Instagram story we're progressing. But as you can see, it just kind of dumps it in the page. You still might just want to stylistically kind of encase this element or this block, if you would, within the page. And really, the focus of the responses from the shapers as I look here, Nick, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but they're saying like, look, it's only our bigger clients that are asking about this, and our smaller clients aren't even aware. Would you say that
I would
feels?
say the bigger clients who are keeping up to date on the latest trends are the ones that are aware of it. The smaller clients aren't, but that's why it's our job to know what the right answer is for them. And it's not necessarily this is something I'm going to use on every client, but when I'm talking to them and finding out what their needs are, I want to have this in my tool belt to say, this is going to address what you're asking for. You don't even know about it, but this is going to help you.
So it's this notion of like trying to help them solve those fundamental business issues. And so because you're on that bleeding edge, if you will, you're able to bring these strategies to those smaller clients. Yeah, it's kind of a chicken and egg as we think about it in the Genesis technology standpoint. I talked to the product and engineering folks after this, and thinking about like, well, should Genesis technology help folks with this or not? You have the plugin, of course, but you start asking things like, should we start making custom blocks and whatnot? I think the jury's still out there, but I think the feedback from the shapers was really interesting. But you have this dynamic of like, people don't know about it, so they're not asking for it, but maybe they should, and you get in this kind of I don't know, like deer in the headlights moment where you're like, should we build ahead on that or should we not? And so this kind of discussion is super helpful. Carrie, do you have anything to add to this? I'm sorry.
I just thought Mike Himberger's response was interesting, that building in support for that kind of scares him. And he mentions schema and microdata back in the back in Genesis, and yay, we support it. And then format shift and Google things die. And then, anyways, to his point, building something that could possibly be bolted on as opposed to native in the code, so you can have access to that integration if you need it, but you don't necessarily have to be stuck with it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think when you also factor in the search visibility part, it starts to make the decisions more complex, because when and where do you provide features? I like the bolt-on suggestion, so that way, not everyone has to inherit a strategy that may not be particularly universal. All right, let's see. Okay, the
Mind if I
next.
interject one thing real quick?
Yeah, please do.
Just looking at what you were bringing up in the playground there, with the client I was referencing, where we've used this already, for their use case, we didn't surface the story inside of their website. It's submitted via Google Search Console, and so it's really only surfaced in Google. But
Really?
looking at your use case, I can see a potential advantage would be to have either a bolt-on plugin, or start integrating into themes where it creates story experiences. So if you have this activated, then the story as a post type is supported and presents a kind of native story view that looks more like the Google Stories page. So somebody wants to put, in their menu stories, you click on it, you can actually start viewing stories that they've created on the site. I think could be a helpful experience rather than just relying on putting that into Google. So,
Well, and that was when I started looking at stories, this was the fundamental question I had, which is this a type of content that I should put on my website because it's better at communicating or converting or whatever the thing I need to do is, or am I putting it on my website because I want it to show up in Google search results? And, it sounds like those could potentially be separate strategies. I mean, everyone always says, of course, write and create for the user, but the reality is you need people to find that content. So you end up doing both users and search engines. But it sounds like your strategy was explicitly around search visibility versus like enhancing or modifying the website's experience. If someone might experience it or kind of in its organic state, if you would.
Yeah.
Very
so,
interesting.
just some added thought on that.
Well, keep pushing the edges, Nick. Let us know how it goes. It seems like the jury's still out for mass adoption, but it seems like there's definitely a lot of opportunities there. All right, moving on to our next question, the Shapers Agenda. What web design trends are you most excited about trying in the sites that you build? And what do you think the future will look like? Sally says she doesn't pay a lot of attention, but she's excited for what's coming in CSS. Nick, are you excited for what's coming in CSS? She doesn't clarify about what she's excited about and what's coming for CSS, but what about you?
There are some things that are just on the edge of support, like CSS masonry, that I'm really excited about, because I've done like 3 projects this year that all involve masonry. And, to some degree or another, you have to use JavaScript if you want it to really click in. Although we've, tried to solve that with a very light experience. It's mostly CSS that gets progressively enhanced with JavaScript so that it actually kind of locks together. And that's great. But I'm looking forward to CSS masonry, where you just have to, add that and it'll just do everything magically and beautifully. I've been learning a lot on grid and very excited about the things that you can do in there. But there's a few things that are just on the edge of support, bleeding edge, that are exciting, that I'm looking forward to as well, like masonry, and a few other new things that are just barely supported in Chrome right now or something, and we'll start seeing them hopefully in the next little bit as CSS4 coalesces.
You know, you didn't say any of these things live, Nick. I'm not seeing it. This is like gold. I'm going to have to send this recording to the product and engineering folks. I'm not seeing this. You talked about headless when you talked about trends.
Yeah.
Tell us about headless. What would get you excited?
Well, like one of the biggest things, Bill Erickson just before that mentioned accessibility and performance. And performance is going to be an increasingly big deciding factor for Google. They've announced it. Accessibility is going to be an increasingly big deciding factor. And so I've gone out and gotten my web accessibility specialist. I just heard last week and have CCPWA and another, you know, so a lot of accessibility things I'm working on. But we're also been learning, I've been doing course learning Gatsby and other things like that. And some of the cool stuff you can do in Gatsby or some other headless frameworks is basically live reloading, and they're making it basically a progressive web app. So when you click on links, it's like instantly bringing up, and then you can set up, CSS cleanups. So it will remove all of the stuff from your CSS that's not on the page. So instead of loading CSS for content sidebar, sidebar, you know, and all these other different layouts that you have, and all the blocks and all the things, like everything that gets loaded, you load exactly what's on the page, which means your page CSS is a fraction of the size, like in some cases 10% literally of that file. It's huge what you can save. And so that's what's making me excited about headless, is the idea of bringing in the content, post-processing it, and then generating static content. So it's like having a caching plugin in that sense, but then that extra processing of cleaning up the CSS and that kind of progressive web app experience, pardon me, is what makes me really excited about going headless versus just finding the best caching plugin.
Understood. Well, for those unfamiliar with headless, it's basically decoupled architecture where WordPress is the content management system, but the rendering layer is done essentially through JavaScript. This is called Jam. There's other variants of it, and you know, static site hosting and things like this. It requires generally a great degree of JavaScript knowledge. So if that's not on your wheelhouse, you're probably not going to adopt it right away. But it's definitely a meta trend in the overall web. It's really interesting to hear you bring that up, Nick. Lots going on in that arena. Ryan Murray mentioned Tailwind CSS. Carrie, any thoughts on Tailwind? Have you played with Tailwind?
It's funny, actually, after the Shapers meeting, I had a call with Ryan and asked him to show me Tailwind because I hadn't worked with
how'd it go?
It was good. It was interesting to see what he was talking about, and along with what Nick said about the benefits of removing unused CSS from the page and pre-rendering so that when you hit a page, it's already there and you're getting that performance aspect. In terms of, well, I guess the question was excitement about trends, not necessarily
Trends, yeah.
in Genesis, but yeah, I'm always a little bit leery of CSS frameworks, but it did look like it had some cool capabilities.
All right. Well, it looks like Bill Erickson also commented on the trends that he's excited about the focus on accessibility and performance. I know, Nick, you mentioned that too, at least on the performance side. The accessibility and performance as a design trend is really interesting. Obviously, there's design decisions that affect accessibility, things like color saturation, contrast, you know, but also performance. I mean, I've even seen in projects that I'm involved with in a variety of contexts, when people start talking about the design of a page, they start making decisions at the design part of that process that says, this approach probably isn't best because it's going to cause a performance issue. And I'm hearing this coming organically from not just the developers, right? before you'd have those stakeholders or marketers say like, oh, we need a slideshow, we need this or this kind of element that might be pretty or cool to look at, but might cause performance issues, especially when you start stacking them up. And I think that's a trend that's transcending just the developers, and is now, being embraced by designers and the decisions they make and stakeholders and what they request for, to kind of frame those requests around the trade-off between what I call suffering and joy. The joy of adding something to your page, but then the subsequent suffering of the performance that might add to your site. All right, next question on the shapers. Nathan Rice asked, Genesis Custom Blocks Pro does not allow for block portability without the site using the block, that's going to use the block, also using the Genesis Custom Blocks Pro plugin. That was a mouthful. Let me explain what this is. With Genesis Custom Blocks Pro, you have additional features like repeating fields and other features that allow you to create more complex types of blocks. Now, when you give that block to someone else, they also have to run the pro version of Genesis Custom Blocks in order to use that block you just gave them. This was surfaced in a conversation that was happening in the days leading up to the Shapers meeting, as John Brown and others started playing around with Genesis Custom Blocks to start creating their own collections for Genesis Blocks. So they want to say, I want to use GCB to make blocks for my own collection. And essentially surface like, look, I can't give this collection to anyone else unless they also have Genesis Custom Blocks Pro. What the shapers really were then asked is, well, okay, look, this is great. We understand this. We definitely want block portability for the blocks you create with Genesis Custom Blocks, including in the pro version. How do you want it to work? If, as we pursued this. And it seemed like the summary from the group fundamentally was a JSON-based approach. I guess Carrie asked you the last one. I'll start with Nick this time. Nick, what was your thought like with block portability? Like, how did you feel like the best approach would, what was your favorite approach for delivering on block portability in GCB Pro?
Well, I've definitely sided on the JSON approach. I've worked with advanced custom fields. Largely, I tend to do that kind of hand-coded stuff, but in some cases, I inherit clients where they're using advanced custom fields. And with one client in particular, we've used advanced custom fields Pro and created a very custom interface and was able to export that as JSON and put that in their site using the advanced custom fields plugin, which is really the ideal solution. Is if there was able to have like just the Genesis Custom Blocks plugin. And if I create it in Genesis Custom Blocks Pro, I can export all that as JSON file, import that for my client, and then they're able to have access to those blocks that I created for their site. And that's kind of the ideal solution, I think, for what we're discussing, and collections, et cetera, being as part of that.
It seems like there's a lot of resounding agreement with that philosophy. We see Rimkus de Frias here noting his agreement. Ryan Murray, believe John Brown's on board for that approach as well. Sally Getch, right off the bat, kind of mentioning that as well. Carrie, what about you? Any opinions on this? I know you've spent a decent amount of time creating blocks with custom blocks. Any thoughts on that portability issue and how you might think it should be approached?
I don't think I had anything to add that wasn't said already to that general consensus of that is a problem that needs to be solved if you're building for clients. And one suggestion Ryan had that was a borrow from WP Toolset, but saying that if you can basically add a license on your client site that enables them to have access to.
Well, that's possible today, but I think in thinking about it, like from the third-party theme provider perspective, you don't know these people. You're certainly not going to put your pro license on these random people buying your site versus, say, an agency customer. And this paradigm exists today, of course, with premium themes, where people will buy the theme, get the support license for it, get the updates for it, and then use it on a client site where the agency is the one that holds those benefits, if you will. And so that's possible today with Genesis Custom Blocks Pro, I think John's point was more like, well, what if I don't want to do that though?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying share I wasn't saying share your pro license, but some sort of a
Okay.
licensing equivalent that would enable customers to not necessarily have Genesis Custom Blocks Pro, but still have like a key to unlock support for blocks created with that.
All right. Well, that's a very good point. I think we're going to go back to the screen sharing for our next question. So this question was like, with block portability with Genesis custom blocks, how do you want it to work? JSON was the most, kind of common preferred method, if you will. But the next question was interesting. Again, it was kind of the pun intended genesis of the first question I just referenced. But the next question is, would you like to use Genesis custom blocks to create blocks used as a collection in Genesis blocks? So this is one of those things where I feel like we just need to see it live. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the screen sharing here. So as a refresher, and if you're unaware, in Genesis blocks, there's a notion of something called collections. And it's basically, the way I like to think about it is it's themes demo content that's chopped up and instantly available to use. So you can see they follow it, the blocks and sections and layouts all follow the same design pattern. And so developers can actually go and create their own versions of these collections to, if you will, invoke in the Genesis blocks context. And so as a third-party theme provider, like one of the reasons this was added to the Genesis blocks context is to make this kind of extensible to third-party theme providers. So the idea there is that the theme providers would create their own versions of collections. And then if you got a theme from a third-party theme provider, then great, they have their stuff in there and it's available for you to use and invoke, if you will, at the click of a button. It seems kind of like an obvious question though, like, should you be able to use a Genesis product to create things for another Genesis product that uses those same kind of things, aka blocks? Nick, what did you think? I mean, is this obvious? Like something we should obviously be able to do?
I think that it would definitely be helpful. I've mentioned in the past working with block patterns, which is a similar kind of concept that's being baked into WordPress, where you have to sort of go create it, then you have to go to the code view, copy all that out, put that into a file, register it, and do all of these things. And I think that, if the collections had a means of kind of creating that, and in WordPress, there's a way to turn something into a reusable block. If there was a way to turn that into a collection instead, and then to have an export for that I can then drop into my theme or into a lot of times I use a kind of standalone plugin for a client instead of putting everything into the theme. So something like this for me would go into a plugin for blocks. But being able to make that portable for clients or for customers, if you have a theme shop and you're creating these sort of things, make that portable for your customers would be really helpful.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about your block patterns approach of mimicking this same kind of experience. I know we talked about this back in the day, but it's kind of this full circle where block patterns were in part inspired by what you're seeing here. And then now from the technology perspective, the team is actually looking to leverage the kind of core version of what you see here, at least from a technology perspective. As we think about creating blocks though, at least for collections, one of the things that's important to us is to provide flexibility for those that might do that. So I think, our consensus after the feedback from the shapers is that yes, people do want to use Genesis custom blocks to be able to create collections, but that's not always true. I mean, some people want to kind of code them from scratch, if they will, or maybe take another approach to creating that collection. So I think that flexibility is also important. Carrie, have you built a block without using something like GCB or ACF or so like PHP type blocks?
No, I have relied on the PHP based tools or the UI based tools like GCB to do that. Over the holidays, maybe I'll learn JavaScript deeply.
Maybe, hopefully.
I did.
Go ahead.
Oh, just want to interject one point along the collections. Hold on, excuse me. That if you go back to the origins of the Genesis framework and adoption across a community, one of the things that um, people have loved is the ability to make their living from it, right? And part of the subset of people that make their living from it are those third-party theme sellers that are able to build a child theme that runs on top of the framework. And in this new paradigm of, as we move towards block first theming and whatnot, I think the ability for third-party theme sellers or third parties to build on top of Genesis collections and then use that as sort of the underpinning is really in spirit of how people have used Genesis in the past uh, to run their own businesses, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I've been mentioning the same flow to folks building their own kind of custom vision. Like if you think about it, like what does Genesis do at its root? And frankly, what does WordPress do at its root? These are technologies that allow developers to build experiences that content creators love to use. In the Genesis blocks context and in third-party theme context, people will have their own collections, their own blocks, their own sections, their own layouts that they distribute to many people. But that doesn't mean that like custom teams also don't want an easy button. This is what WP Engine does in our own website. We have our own pre-designed, pre-optimized versions of blocks and website elements in general that our content creators just can kind of plop on a page and start building with right away. Sure enough, I choose the one block that I got to use the recovery button on. There it is, working like a peach. But these kind of I call them magic time machines, and really fundamentally in the block context, and not exclusive to Genesis blocks. You're just really asking yourself, like, what time machines am I going to create? What am I going to design? What integrations do I want to include in my magic time machines? And that's fundamentally how I think about all this. In the Genesis context, this is done through collections. But again, having that be open, not just to people that distribute lots of themes, but people that make their own stuff and want it invocable and usable in the moment. I think it's just an exciting time to be in WordPress. All right, next up on the agenda, I want to make sure I'm not skipping my questions here. But next up we have, do you want us to test a completely redesigned Genesis custom blocks building experience? And it looks like Sally said, okay, she would. The Y was down, Anita Carter. Carrie, you said you were going to do it. Did you fill out this form for the beta group?
I did. I'm in, but I haven't gotten anything on the back end yet, so not sure what the timing of that looks like.
Okay, so it's on us. It's not on you then.
I
All
have
right.
lopped that tennis ball back over the net.
Okay, well, if Ryan Kenstra or Luke Carbis, you're listening, Carrie's waiting for feedback on that beta. I'm sure it's still in the works, Carrie. You'll get that update soon. We'll post a link to the beta sign up form in the blog post for this recap episode. So check that out on studiopress.blog if you'd like to go. Let's see what else we have here. Is this our final question? It might be. Do you support Genesis theme customers who use block focused and non-block themes? Are you seeing that block focused theme users have lower tech support needs or more? Does the block editor measurably make things easier for the end user? So even here in our recap to date, I'm saying things like, oh, these are magic time machines. Look, people can just click on stuff and enter content and change the design. It's so much easier. Like you see it instinctively feels like that should be true. But the question to the shapers was, is this actually true? Carrie, are you seeing that? Do you feel like people are building sites more easily with the block editor, at least in your experience? I know you train a lot of people. Have you seen this like through the training lens, like block editing makes it easier for people to adopt WordPress and build with it?
I'm still seeing quite a bit of pushback on it, but of course, what I'm seeing is only anecdotal to my little window. The folks
because they like page builders better, or they just have their way of doing things and don't want to learn the new way?
Exactly, like a if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of mentality. But the folks that answered it here in the stream all do active theme support for their theme. So Mike and his My Theme, and Lauren Gage with Restored 360 themes, and so they probably have more insights. Nick probably has more insights than that than I do.
Yeah, it seems like Lauren, we'll get to you here in a second, Nick, but I just want to read what Lauren said. On our end, I'd say the support level is about the same on both sides. So Lauren runs a third-party theme company, if you're not familiar. I deal with a lot of people who just don't get all this stuff yet anyways, need a little bit more hand-holding. So it seems like the jury is still out, at least from her perspective, on whether the block editor is actually delivering an easier experience for folks. Again, instinctually, it seems that way. Nick, what do you think?
I guess I'll just share an experience I had with a client recently. Uh, we built out some stuff, and part of it uses block patterns, part of it uses some custom blocks, and they're able to go in and make changes. They have contacted us a few times, like, how do we add in the Jumbotron box? They don't necessarily know what to call it, and so I've had to record how to find the block pattern, search for Jumbotron, insert it, and then change backgrounds and stuff if they want to, and give that to them. So, you know, front end, I would say it seems like that's a little bit more effort because I've had to record almost every single block pattern. Like, it hasn't clicked, like, just go to the block patterns or go to the blocks or do this or do that. Like, every single one that we've created, I've shown, like, I did one big video showing the whole thing, and then I've had to do individual ones every time they want to add, how do I do this list? Well, you go in and you add a list, and then over on the side, you click the style that shows the checkbox on it. And so they have to do that. On the other hand, we also created a custom post type for events and for press articles. And they wanted to add new ones and didn't know how to do that. So I had to go record something for that, not using the old traditional meta fields, you know, title, event date, blah, 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 down the line. And so I had to record something to show them how to do that. So in some cases, it's just that, you know, any kind of interface is new. Any kind of interface is different. If it's not something they're using literally every day, they are going to have questions about it. If they're not the kind of inquisitive person that's willing to go in and like click around and try and figure things out, they're going to come back to you and say, how do you do this? Even if you've written documentation and recorded videos, there's going to be ongoing stuff until it just kind of clicks. And I think block editor, meta fields, you know, classic editor, they're all the same experience for people who aren't doing this, and they just need to know somebody is there that cares enough to answer and not be like, you're asking me this question, it's so simple. They just want somebody who's going to be like, I get you, I understand, you don't do this every day, let me walk you through this again, and treat them like a person. And that's what they want, regardless of what interface you've given them. And that's what's going to make the difference for them, regardless of what interface you've given them.
I love it. I love it. What a wonderful thought to end on there, Nick. A very, very user focused, very apropos. Well, I want to that ends it really for the list of questions we asked the shapers here and this recap episode. Carrie, thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to check out more about what Carrie's up to, if you'd like to learn Genesis in particular, visit carriedils.com, DILS.com. And Nick, thank you for your time here.
And thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Of course. If you'd like to check out what Nick is up to, check out designsbynickthegeek.com. You can also check out the book Genesis Explained. Thanks everyone else for listening, and stay tuned for future episodes of the Genesis Community Livecast. Again, I'm your host, David Vogelpole. I've been in the Genesis community for a little over 8 years now. I lead Genesis at WP Engine, and I love helping the Genesis community get better together with my friends from the Shapers. Thank you.